Miles. How are you today? Today I wanted to talk about something that affects a lot of people when it comes to loss, and it's called ambiguous loss. Here's a book written by Pauline Boss on ambiguous loss, and I so suggest people buying this book. I think it's one of the best books there are on loss. All right, so let's talk about what she means by ambiguous loss a little bit. There's two kinds of loss, Pauline says. There's kind of loss, when it comes to ambiguous loss, that is. One is where the person is physically present but psychologically absent. When you think about somebody being there but not really being themselves, you might think of somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia. You might think of somebody with chronic mental illness or addiction. You might think of somebody who has a traumatic brain injury. Or even she talks about somebody who's preoccupied with work or somebody who's always distracted. They're there, but they're not really there. And then she talks about people that are not physically present, but they're psychologically present. And those people would be people missing in action. When this happens with adoption, sometimes someone will ask a woman how many children she has, and she's thinking, do I include the child I gave up for adoption? This could also be immigration, leaving your country, that the people are not there, but they're psychologically, we carry our family with us. We miss them so much. Any type of situation like that, divorce. There's a lot of divorce, and that can also create this kind of ambiguous loss, that the person's not there, but psychologically we're very aware of them. So I think it's really, really important to bear that in mind when we're talking to people, because many, many people go through loss. How about when somebody's physically very ill? Maybe they're dying, and maybe there's a roller coaster experience that we actually think it's coming to an end, the person's going to die. We slowly or not so slowly prepare ourselves for that, and then they get better. And then just when we think they're really getting better, then that person dies. And it's like such a feeling of out of control. And Pauline talks about that even though sometimes with losses like this, it can feel very much out of control, it is still possible to live a happy life by learning how to manage the stress. And one way that we manage stress is to get information. So talking to doctors and clinicians and counselors and asking for as much information as we need helps give us a sense of control. Encouraging families to communicate. If they have somebody in the family who's very ill, perhaps, let's just say, having each person go around and talk about their thoughts and feelings, their wishes, is really, really important. So encouraging communication can really help. And then learning to accept. So if somebody has Alzheimer's, learning to accept the person who is there and the person who they've lost. I remember when my grandfather had Alzheimer's and my aunt talking a lot about the fact that she had to keep grieving the fact that who her father was no longer, but she wanted to be present and love the man who was there in front of her, although he wasn't the father that she had known for years. And that's important too. And also, please acknowledge those that are going through all kinds of ambiguous loss. Don't just say a loss is only about death. There's so many other losses that we really need to be understanding about and kind to people and ask and say, how are you doing? You know, I know you're dealing with your son who has been in and out of prison, or your daughter who's been in and out of addiction treatment centers, or whatever it is, or a divorce, and say, how's it going? Do you want to talk about it? I'm here to listen. So just be more aware that there are many, many people that deal with something called ambiguous loss. And please think about getting that book or getting it for a friend who's going through one of those losses. It's a great, great support. Thanks, Miles.